installation is to honor those who took a stand during the Holocaust and who risked their lives to save the life of others. It is also an invitation to the viewers of the installation to take a stand against all kinds of intolerance, hatred, and racism. I started this installation about 5 years ago. I interviewed Holocaust survivors for the oral archives of the Wiesenthal Center, and I became horrified by people's cruelty towards their fellow humans. I would like to start by talking a little bit about your experiences before the war. I know you were very young,
yes.
But what can you remember? What was... One of the interviews that made a deep impression on me was that of Peter Metzeler. He was hidden and protected by a family in the Netherlands. In this interview, he is reading a letter he wrote to the daughter of the family that saved him.
Some pictures. I hope it will cover the cost. In your later life, you can always feel proud being the daughter of such wonderful, selfless people as your parents were. I know I am, having only known them for such a short time. Many thanks in advance. I wish you and your family happiness and good.
In addition to interviewing Holocaust survivors, I read accounts and I also studied history books. I kept a journal and I jotted down everything that came to my mind related to the project. I also wrote down all the sources of the books that I had consulted in case I needed to refer to them again. I am very grateful to San Diego State University professor Lawrence Barron, an authority on the Holocaust, for his expert advice. He not only provided me with information, but he took the time to verify the accuracy of my historical references. When I did is I actually went to the library and got all the books. So all the others went out. Each panel in the exhibition represents a different wall, and each is an abstract representation of acts of courage. I chose walls for their dual symbolism of protection and security, as in the case of people who offered hiding and shelter, and at the same time for their role as separation and barrier, as in the case of ghettos and concentration camps. Walls also stand as witnesses to history and as testimonials to events.
I think something really important about this exhibit is that walking around, you can actually relate to a lot of the pieces. For me, as a descendant of a Holocaust survivor, there was one particular piece that stood out to me and allowed me to relate to.
I used a variety of techniques for this installation. Here, I am sewing the fabric to create texture. Once it's stitched, I glue it to the canvas, and then I will cover it with a protective archival medium. Once it's dry, I will paint it. I like to bring objects into my studio to study the actual shapes and colors. Even though my paintings are non-representational, I like to get my inspiration from real life. I am creating a wall to honor the partisans. They were the resistance fighters that hid in the vast forests of Eastern Europe. Although small in numbers, they were able to disrupt Nazi activities. Thousands of families were saved by hiding in the forest protected by the partisans. The trees became their hideouts and their homes. My husband Enrique helped me with two other important elements of the installation. First, a life-size sculpture of a wall that pulls together the theme of wall as protection and wall as barriers. And second, a 3-step inverted staircase that will be attached to the ceiling of the gallery, representing an entrance to an attic. What about here? Does it have to be attached here? Do you think that it is attached here? This panel represents Kinder Transport, an effort by the British government that helped save almost 10,000 children from death by transporting them by train to England. Courageous parents send their children away, knowing full well that they might never see them again. Another story that was very touching to me was that of Stephanie Lauer.
The time that I left to go with the Kindertransport, my brother was very ill. He had meningitis, and so he was not allowed to leave with me. And I remember my mother took me to this huge railroad station in Berlin. And yes, I remember leaving, and my grandmother who lived with us, and I just said goodbye to her as if it were nothing, you know. I didn't even embrace her.
This painting is called A Window of Hope. And I use the window because I'm using walls as a metaphor for people that helped and sheltered. And I thought that it was an adequate metaphor for the hope that people bring when they act together to save others. And the entire Danish population acted together, taking Jews at night in small fishing boats, just like this one, to take them to Sweden.
What I really like about the artwork and the presentation is that we're really focusing on the present and the hope for the future.
The final component of the installation was created by an enthusiastic group of college students. They were in charge of researching, formatting and pasting hate literature published in the last 5 years. This information was later printed on newsprint. This is to illustrate that sad reality of the prevalence of hate and intolerance in our days.
The newspaper that's crumpled up all over the floor of the installation was put together by college students through Hillel. And they found articles from the last 5 years of hate literature targeting not only Jews, but also minorities, women, people with disabilities, people of other races.
Visitors to the installation will walk over these tossed out papers, creating noise. And they will gradually destroy them physically and metaphorically. It will serve as a mindful act of rejection against hatred and intolerance.